Hello everybody, welcome to Cyberlock Entertainment, and since it's Halloween I wanted to rank what might possibly be my favourite game series, the Batman Arkham series. This is my personal opinion, and let me know what you think below if you agree or disagree, or just your favourite parts of the Arkham series. With that said, let's get on to the ranking. At number 5 is Arkham Origins Blackgate, a 2.5D twist on the classic Arkham gameplay. It kinda worked, but I much preferred the more typical Arkham gameplay, and I think a lot of people did as well. This game is set after the events of Batman Arkham Origins and had an alright story about going into Blackgate and stopping the riot caused by 3 major supervillains. One thing I liked about the game was that each villain had their own section of Blackgate with different enemy types and hazards. The game was an alright attempt to create a more Metroid-style Arkham game, but the gameplay loses a lot of its depth when moving to 2D, and the final result meant the gameplay was just too simple and it got old pretty fast. At number 4 is probably a really shocking opinion, but number 4 is Batman Arkham Knight, which might be my most disappointing game ever. That's not to say the game is bad in any way. It had the most fleshed out gameplay and it had the best combat of the entire series. However, for the many things it does right, there are many things it does wrong. I'll start with what I liked about the game though, in case I get too negative and nitpicky. So I really enjoyed the combat in Arkham Knight, as they introduced a lot of stuff like using the environment and more advanced Predator techniques. Also really enjoyed most of the side missions, as we got to see characters such as Professor Pig and Man-Bat, who aren't the most popular villains, so it was nice to see them. And I enjoyed the Riddler's puzzle rooms when you play as Batman and Catwoman, not the Riddler races though. Apart from that, I find most things about this game sadly disappointing. The story I found was very forgettable, and Scarecrow was really weak as a villain, which was a real shame, because Scarecrow is one of my favourite villains. But he was mostly pushed aside for the new character, the Arkham Knight, whose identity was wildly debated and teased during the build-up to the release of the game, and then in the end was the person everyone thought it was. Predator sections were also way too easy, with the Fear Takedown move taking out half the goons at the start of the section. Boss fights were pretty bad as well, with the biggest crime being putting Deathstroke, the world's greatest assassin, in a tank, and then making it a stealth tank section that was just really dumb. The most annoying thing in the game was the Batmobile. This thing took up half of the gameplay, and for some reason was used with the Riddler puzzles. I really disliked having to shoot all the drones with the Batmobile. However, driving around in it was a lot of fun, but stopping and shooting at some unmanned drones got tiring really fast, and there was way too much of it. I personally just feel that it missed a lot of the charm the other games had, where stealth sections were challenging, and gliding around as Batman, it was still the best form of movement in the game. I know a lot of people really love this game, but to me it's still a good game, but it was just so disappointing and isn't anywhere near as good as the previous entries in the Arkham series. At number 3 is Batman Arkham Origins. I feel like this game was heavily underrated. And on release, yes, it was a buggy mess, but underneath all that was a really solid Batman game with some of my favourite boss fights in it. I also really enjoyed the story in this game, even though it used Joker again, which made a lot of people groan. But I still think it did a good job with, for example, Bane, who was finally done justice to his comic book character. As here, he's actually smart. Compared to the big tough brute that Asylum City made him out to be, the gameplay didn't change much from the Arkham formula, just adding new enemy types and the very overpowered electric gloves. In fact, there was something just off about the combat. I don't know what it was, it just felt a tiny bit off. But I enjoyed a lot of the stealth. I also thought it had very interesting locations in the story. The one thing I really disliked about the game was actually Gotham City, as it reused a lot of areas from Arkham City and just covered it in very boring looking snow. The city also felt completely lifeless apart from groups of goons, but every part of Gotham kind of just looked the same to me, and I could never tell where I was in Gotham when I was free roaming. The game also had a pretty fun multiplayer mode though, with 2 villain factions fighting each other while Batman and Robin also try and take them down. Sadly though, this was discontinued and is not available to play anymore. And at number 2 is Batman Arkham Asylum, and this was so hard to decide between this and City, but Batman Arkham Asylum hands down has my favourite atmosphere in any game ever. Only Bioshock's Rapture can compare in my opinion. Look and design of this game is just flawless. It's very creepy and you can feel the madness of the place as you go through each area of the asylum. Just stopping and looking around at the architecture and objects, you can tell the history of the place just by looking at it. And to fully immerse yourself, the character bios you unlock while playing tell you more about what happened in the asylum. Combat is superb and it still holds up to this day, even though it has been improved vastly over the years. The pacing of the game is fantastic and you never know what location you'll go to next or what gadget you will unlock. One of my favourite parts of the game was the scarecrow sections that were terrifying when you first play the game, with the morgue section and the game crashing section, and they are still effective even now. The only thing I wasn't a fan of was there was too many Titan boss fights, and the final boss fight with Joker was way too easy and a major letdown after such a great build up. Apart from that, this game is nearly flawless and in my opinion one of the best games of all time. So at number 1 is Batman Arkham City, my favourite open world game ever and possibly my favourite video game ever. The actual Arkham City is so rich and detailed with so many interesting locations and things to explore and discover. The Riddler challenges were the best here as well, with the Saw Death Trap type puzzle rooms being a real highlight. The amount of amazing villains you face in the game was insane, and it somehow managed to not feel bloated even with so many villains. The gameplay had the perfect mix of stealth and combat based sections. It also had the best boss fights of the series, with Mr. Freeze on the hardest difficulty requiring you to use almost every possible move you learned, and stops you from making the same move twice by adapting to your gameplay. The amount of detail in this game is crazy, as just by listening to goons can reveal so much about the world and the lives of each criminal in Arkham City. It pretty much improved everything about Arkham Asylum and even let you play as Catwoman, which was really amazing. One of the most underlooked part of the game for me was definitely the challenge maps, which let you choose a combat or stealth encounter in any of the great locations in the game and complete specific challenges for each one. You could even customize them to make them harder or easier depending on what you felt like. So it had great villains, amazing gameplay, and it is the best Batman game ever made. So, that was my ranking of all the Arkham games. Thanks so much for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more top 10s, rankings, reactions, gameplay challenges, and more videos coming soon. But until then, this has been Cyberlock Entertainment.